Now let's go to this section, the menu on the right. Let's go here and check what's happening here. So this is very interesting. We see this about, specs, pricing. It's all aligned horizontally. There's some space between. There's some kind of like underline or some colored line below these elements. And when we hover over they change both of the underline and the color of the text changes. So if I go to this, no, I cannot move here. Okay, I will stick with my Excalibur. So how can we create this? So first of all, I have to go from a vertical stacking for a vertical layout like this to a horizontal. So I have to focus on the navigation at this point. So I will go here and I will just unfold the nav. This is where my menu lives. The menu, I can target this menu using the nav, or I can just add an ID, because maybe I will add some more navigation elements inside my page and I want just to focus and select this element. So I'm going to add an ID. I will say main menu, so that I can target this specific nav menu. So I'm going to use this ID and I'm going to fold some of these elements and go here, nav, main menu. I put the nav element just to remind me that I'm targeting a navigation element. I can also use the ID only, depends on what you like. And in order to make this section like appear like stack horizontally, like being laid out, these elements to be laid out like horizontally, instead of by the default vertical stacking, I can go inside the nav, I can go inside the UL, and I can set the display to flex. And you will see that immediately the display flex moves the direction to direction row, and all the elements are stacked next to each other. Now there's a problem here. I see my text is being like it's one on top of each other, and actually they're not on top of each other. There's this dot. Let me remove this just to see. So by default the UL places this dot at the left side, these bullet points. Now if I if I set the display to flex, we will see the text, and on top of the text on the left side we have these bullet points, and these are the things that create this kind of like unreadable text. So if I want to remove this default styling of unordered lists, I will just remove the display flex just to see the difference here. So if I want to remove this, there's a special property called list style. So by default the list style has this this circle. No, sorry, not this circle. There's, I think, circle. I think the disk is the disk. Yeah, by default it's the disk. Now if I set the property to none, I will just hide this list styling. So there's no styling, which means that if I set now the display to flex, the elements will be stacking one next to each other horizontally, but without any extra space. Okay, we need some extra space between the elements, and the flexbox gives us this ability to add some gap between the elements. So I'm going to set the gap to 1 rem. Okay, I have this gap, they look nice. Let me also give them a font size of 1 rem, or maybe a little bit bigger. They already are 1 rem, so let me make them a little bit closer to my design. Okay, so I think we're around here. Let me also give an outline to this one, so I can like see where this box is placed and how much space it takes. So I see this box. I will also add an outline on the li elements inside the inside the unordered list, just to see where and how they stack up. And just by applying this outline, you will see that we kind of like are able to see things that weren't like visible to us without these debugging tools, these outlines. So you can see there's some extra space here where I can see the gap here. This red, like the small spaces between the text is the gap. I can remove the gap. Okay, the gap is gone, but there's this extra space here. So where this extra space is coming from? So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to the inspector, because that's the best tool to and try to find and detect where some spacing issues are coming from. But before doing that, I'm going to switch back to this to the ordinary display of an UL element, and this is the space that we want to get rid of. So when the UL has this style, we can see the space as a left space here. If we set to display flex, we can still see it at the far left side, but we don't want to get rid of this space. So what is this space and where does it come from? Once again, the inspector tool to the rescue, inspect, and I will go and try to find out which element is creating this space. I will start with, let's say, the LI elements. As you can see, nothing is highlighted on the screen. But if I go to the UL, you will see there's a green area. That's extra space is in green. The green is the color of the padding. The blue, sorry, the orange area that you see on the top and the bottom is the margin. So by default, UL elements have these box model values. So we have 20 pixels on top and bottom, and we have a padding of 40 pixels at the left. So I want to get rid of them. So there is no padding and there's no margin. I don't want these default settings, so let me reset. And of course I have to go and change these values to my code, because if I refresh, they will be still here. So let's reset the margin of the unordered list, and let me also padding left. So let me also reset the padding left. Now we're good to go. Let's enable display flex, and let's add the gap, and we see something that looks nice. Okay, let me use like a light gray color here so that it's a little bit less it's more useful. So, or I will set my like a white color with some kind of like opacity, low opacity. So I can use a white color with the opacity set to 0.4 so that it doesn't look you know, as intrusive as before. Okay, but I can still see the outline. Okay, now we have this. Let's add a little bit more gap between these elements, and let me just temporarily like disable the debugging here rules. The thing I want to do right now is to create the underline. So I want to create this blue underline beneath these elements. So in order to do that, I can use the box model. So each element have like a border box. If I go here, so I can use this. The border allows me to create like some border. So I will use 5. I'm not sure why this is not working. Okay, there's a bug here. I can see this styling applied. Okay, I will go to the styles here, and I will select the element, and I will add some border. So the border adds this, you know, this kind of like rectangle around these elements, and I only want the thing at the bottom, because my styling has this thing at the bottom. So I can make use of the border box, but I only want to use the border side of the border box. I can do that because by default border includes both the top, left, bottom and right corners of the box. If I set the border box to border bottom, I can just have the bottom area. So I can use this to recreate this border that I see on the mockup. And I also need some space between the about and the border. Now this space between the content, the about is the content, this blue box, this is the border. As you can see, the space I need is between the content and the border, which is the padding. So if I set this, let me try see if this works. Okay, yeah, let me put this like 16. So if this is the content, this is the area between the content and the border. So if I add a little bit space at the padding bottom, then I again get the result that I see on my mockup. So I can use a border box with a bottom setting and a padding to actually give my elements the space they need and give the styling that I see on the mockup. The only problem is that I see that this line is connected. Like there is a space, there is this space between these elements, but this line, the underlying like border bottom, is one straight line. So there's a problem here. But first let's just let's refresh and go here in my li and set the border bottom to be 4 pixels solid, and I'm going to use a variable. I have already the text light color, so there's my border bottom. I can also padding bottom to 2 rems, let's say. So give some space. No, that's 1 rem, and a little bit heavier border, so 6 pixel. It looks okay. Now where does this space come from? Once again, I can use the inspector. I can see no space here in the LIs. If I go here, you will see there's a flex magenta color. That's the gap. So if I click here, you will see, I'm not sure if I can see it here. There's a style here, helper. I believe there's a way we can see like the gap highlighted here. Anyway, the magenta color in between the elements it's the gap. So that's what's creating this gap between these elements, and that breaks the continuity of the underlying border bottom. So if I remove the gap, we'll have a straight line, but we do have the problem that these are very, very closely stuck to each other. So the gap doesn't work because it splits the line, but without the gap I have this lack of space here. So instead of using the gap, I can use the padding. So each element has a padding, a space between the border and the border. So I can go here, for example, and I can go to the computed. So here's the content, here's the border, and here's like the padding. So if I set the padding here to 16, I can add the necessary space in order to get the styling that I see in the mockup. So I will have to get rid of the gap because it splits the border bottom, and I will use the padding of its li to create the space. So let's go and do this. So unfortunately the gap didn't work, so let me go here. So I will remove the gap, and I will add a padding of 1 rem all around these elements, so that I can have like this straight line at the bottom, and also this space between the text. So let me outline to see what is happening here. As you can see, we have these boxes. They have like the content, the space around the text, which is the padding, and then the bottom. So everything looks just like my mockup. The only thing is that the left hand side and the rightmost like elements do not have an extra space here. So as you can see here, the about doesn't have an extra space on the right, on the left, and the sign up doesn't have an extra space on the right. So I need to get rid of this space and this space. Once again, if I'm not sure how and where the space comes from, I can go and use the inspector. So if I want to get rid of this space, I will go here. I will see there's a green area, so this space is actually the padding. I can go to my computed, and I can highlight here and see that this is the padding that goes all around the box. So if I want to get rid of the right part side of this space, that's the padding at the left. So I can move this to 0. Likewise, if I can inspect this element, I will see the padding, I will see the space on the right is this padding right. So if I can get rid of this, you can see that automatically there is a dynamic styling placed in this element when I play around with a computed box. Of course, this will be discarded once I refresh the page, but I now know that this is a padding right 0, a padding left 0. So let me refresh and fix this. So in order to target the first element in this list and the last element is in this list, I can use the CSS selectors first child and last child. So I will use this selector. I will just apply an outline. So let me copy the outline to just see what I'm targeting. So I'm going to use this selector, but instead of, let me just also use an orange here to strike out. And in order for me to select the first element, instead of just selecting all the li elements, I'm going to add first child. Now I know that I'm targeting the first element of the list. I will copy this and target the last child. Okay. And now I need to get rid of the padding left from here and the padding right from the last child. Padding right 0, and I get closer to my design. Get rid of the outline and we have our mock-up. So as you can see, with just the padding we got closer to our mock-up. Okay, next step is to implement the hover color. So the hover color is white, which means that when I hover over these elements, the border and the text should switch to white. This is an easy task. All I have to do is copy this selector for the li elements and apply a pseudo class. Pseudo class, like hover for example, sets some CSS properties only when the behavior that the pseudo class gets applied to happens in the browser. For example, when the user hovers over the element, the mouse cursor, then these rules will be applied. So I can set the color to white, and if I want to check, I can of course go to my screen and hover over, so I can see that it works. But because I want to check a little bit more easily, I can just set this to li, see where I want to get to. So I want the color white and I want the border bottom color to be white, so I will set the border bottom color to be white. So I test everything like this, and when I'm ready I will apply the hover pseudo class. So just get rid of the pseudo class so you can always see the styling that you want to apply, and then of course you can just hover and see that everything is working as expected. Now another thing that I would do here is to apply a cursor pointer to these elements, because these are navigatable like elements. These should be clickable. I don't want to see this text selector or this arrow pointer when I hover over them. I want them to show the pointer, which is like an indicator to the user that these elements are clickable. So in order to switch to a different cursor when I hover over them, I will go here to the li and I will say cursor, change my cursor to pointer. There are different values for the pointer. You can play around and see all of them, but for now you will see that I see my hand, which is the default like pointer, the cursor style for when something is clickable. Okay,